I will call this hybrid meeting of the House Ways and Means Committee for April the 19th to order. Good morning, everyone. And I'm hoping that I am not the only one that's feeling a little strange here today. But it is so good to see everyone here in person today. I also have some members and staff who are participating remotely. This hybrid hearing is taking place pursuant to Rule 10.01 and can also be viewed through the House webcast. Ms. Anna, would you please take the roll for attendance?
Chair Moran.
Present.
Vice Chair Olson, excused. Representative Garofalo.
Present.
Representative Albright. Representative Becker-Finn.
Present.
Representative Bernardi.
Present.
Representative Eklund.
Present.
Representative Hansen.
Here.
Representative Hassan.
Hassan's here.
Representative Hertas.
Here.
Representative Hornstein.
Present.
Representative Johnson.
Present.
Representative Kreshaw, excused. Representative Lillie.
Present.
Representative Lillie.
Lillie present.
Representative Mariani.
Mariani present.
Representative Marquardt.
Marquardt present.
Representative Miller.
Present.
Representative Nash.
Present.
Representative Nelson.
Present.
Representative Noor.
Present.
Representative O'Neill.
Present.
Representative Pulowski.
Pulowski present.
Representative Petersburg.
Present.
Representative Pinto.
Present.
Representative Schumacher.
Schumacher present.
Representative Schultz.
Present.
Representative Scott.
Here.
Representative Sundin.
Sundin present.
And Representative Albright.
Albright present.
Madam Chair, a quorum is present.
So a quorum is present. So members, this is our first hybrid hearing with new technology. So we may encounter some glitches along the way. I want to thank you in advance for your patience as we navigate this new system. A couple of points before we begin. For those in the room, if you would like to be recognized, please catch Ms. Anna's eyes and she'll put you on a running list. For those participating remotely, please continue to raise your hand, use the hand function, and we'll add you to the list. For those participating remotely, you may need to speak up or move closer to the microphone in order to be heard. And please remember to keep yourself muted when not speaking. For members in the room, the microphones are very sensitive, so please be aware of side conversations. But when speaking, please do speak into the microphone. With that, let's get started. Our first agenda item is approval of the minutes from our previous hearing. The minutes were provided in members' package, so you should have those, and they were also posted online. Representative Becker-Finn. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for April the 4th, 2022?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay. Are there any questions or corrections to those minutes? Anyone see any? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. The motion prevails and the minutes are approved. So members, we have a full agenda today. The plan is to begin the agenda and go until about 10:45 when we will break for session. We will reconvene at 1 o'clock to complete the agenda. So the next item on the agenda is the adoption of the budget resolution. Chair Marquardt, would you take my seat while I present?
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Moran. Welcome to your committee. And would you like to move the budget resolution?
Yes, Chair Marquardt, I move the document identified as BUDS RES 04.
Chair Moran has moved the resolution, which is Bud Res 04. Chair Moran, to your resolution.
All right, thank you, Chair Marquardt. Members, with all that has happened in the world over the last 2 years, I'm not sure anybody would have predicted that we would be looking at a budget surplus so large as the one that Minnesota is enjoying today. But thanks to the incredible efforts of our workforce and the investment we've made as a legislature to stabilize our public health and our economy, we have come through the storm. We now have an historic opportunity to catch up and keep up with the needs of Minnesotans, whether that be through improved funding for our schools, increased services to our most vulnerable citizens, larger investment in preserving our natural resources and infrastructure, our targeted tax relief to families and businesses who are still recovering from the pandemic. The 2022 budget resolution is the roadmap we would use to tackle all of these needs in the House of Representatives. And there are still many needs. This resolution prioritizes families, workers, and local businesses who made sacrifices to help our state get through these past years. It helped ensure that Minnesotans have access to their most fundamental needs, like a strong education, childcare, housing, healthcare, and public safety. It provides resources to move all types of Minnesota businesses forward and train our workforce for the economy of tomorrow. And throughout this budget, you will see over the coming days that equity is once again a fundamental principle in all of our work. No one is left behind in this budget. Chair Marquardt, I will now ask for Ms. Adrian and Mr. Sullivan to walk through the spreadsheet and the resolution, and then I stand ready for questions.
Thank you very much, Chair Moran. Ms. Adrian, if you would walk us through the resolution, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everybody. It just dawned on me that I won't be walking through this remotely, so I hope that everyone who's joining remotely has access to the same document. At the very top, it's titled the House Budget Targets General Fund Fiscal Years 22 and 23. And so it's just a one-page document that I will walk through. And as I said, apologies for everybody joining remotely. If they have any questions, they can contact me later. So what this document reflects, these are the numbers that are in the budget resolution that Mr. Sullivan prepared. And what I will focus on, the column that's on the very right-hand side of the page that says change from base. These are the numbers that show up in the budget resolution. This is just, it might be an easier way to look at the numbers. And so I'll just quickly walk through all of the different budget areas and the targets that each committee area received. So the first one is agriculture, and the target is $60 million. These numbers are all in thousands, I'll remind members. The column that is on the very left, these are the base numbers that would show up in the fund balance from the February forecast. So this is the sort of the starting point for the budget area. And then if $60 million were added to that, that's the proposed number, the column that's in the middle for the budget fiscal years 22 and 23. I should also have mentioned that we're only looking at the current biennium. The budget resolution does not reflect what we think of as the tails for fiscal years 24 and 25. So like I said, agriculture would have been $60 million, which would put that budget area at just about $199 million. Capital investment, the budget target for that area is $200 million. Climate and energy is at $80 million. The commerce budget area is $7.815 million. Early childhood received a budget target of $250 million. This will later be split between health and human services and education, but for now it's the combined target of $250 million. The education target is $1.155 billion for the biennium. Environment is $240 million. Health and Human Services has a budget target of $700 million. And just below that, you can see that there's, I think of it like a sub-target. It's an amount that is included in that $700 million. It's for preventing homelessness, and that's $150 million. So again, I hope that's clear that that's part of the $700 million target that Health and Human Services received. Below that, higher education received $100 million for the biennium. Housing is at $230 million. Industrial education and economic development, it's $25 million. The Judiciary Committee area is at $140 million. The Labor, Industry, Vets, and Military Affairs Committee is $49.713 million. And again, there is money set aside within that target for Veterans and Military Affairs. That amount is just under $43.9 million. The Public Safety Committee received $200 million. State government is $476.5 million. Again, this has a sub-target for pensions. So the pensions amount is $400 million out of that target for state government. Tax aids and credits is just below $1.65 billion for the biennium. Transportation is at $225 million. Workforce and business development had a target of $175 million. And that those are all the committee areas. So then the next section on this document lists the bills that have passed either through Ways and Means or off of the House floor. So it just lists the amounts that were budgeted within those bills for all of the bills that are listed. I won't walk through all of those, but I do want to point out there at the very bottom of that list is a line that says claims and other bills. So this is an amount set aside for any other bills that might come up that should go through the Ways and Means Committee and for the claims bill that will come up as well. So the total net spending for the change items plus all of the other bills that are listed and that might potentially pass is $7.364 billion. And so in the budget resolution, this is the general net expenditure changes that are accommodated in the resolution. Then the last thing that I'll mention at the very bottom, this may or may not be a helpful calculation for people, but this is how the calculation for the general fund balance. So the first column is the way that we get to the surplus that everyone keeps mentioning, the nearly $9.3 billion. So the forecasted revenue for this biennium was just under $57.3 billion. There was some carry forward from the previous year and previous biennium of about $3.7 billion. Every biennium, we budget for about $20 million worth of cancellations. And then, and net of, I should mention, net of that carry forward, we have some statutory items that are set aside when there is a surplus. So money that would be set for the budget reserve or the stadium reserve, those kinds of items have already been taken out of these numbers. So the true available amount is that $61 billion number that's at the bottom line there. So when we take the difference of the $61 billion and the base spending of $51.8 billion just about, we get to that $9.3 billion surplus amount. And so if the proposed changes, all of the changes from the base were added to the base numbers, then the calculation on the right, it would be, I'll just get to the bottom line, it would be $1.88 billion remaining. And so what this amount, it's quite a bit left on the bottom line, but a lot of the spending items are not one time, they continue into the tails. So then that money carries forward and covers the new spending items in the next biennium as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Adrian, thank you so much. Before we go to questions, I'd like to turn this also over to Mr. Sullivan. Anything to add?
Mr. Chair and members, I would just add, looking at the the document itself, that the numbers that Ms. Adrian's read, the target numbers for the general fund by major finance and revenue bill, those appear in the resolution as members are used to in years past. Also, an item members are used to seeing is on 1.6 to 1.7. The resolution also sets the balances for the budget reserve, the cash flow account, and the stadium reserve account. And then on the bottom of page 2, lines 2.13 to 2.16, aside from general fund targets that Ms. Adrian's just read, the resolution also sets targets for the Healthcare Access Fund and the State Fiscal Recovery Federal Fund. And by setting a 0 target, the resolution effectively prohibits additional spending or supplemental spending from those funds in the major finance and revenue bills. That's all that I have, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Sullivan, thank you so much. So members, before we go to amendments and or comments, are there any questions of Chair Moran or Ms. Adrian's or Mr. Sullivan on the numbers? Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Chair Moran, just a question on the education piece. And I know Representative Dabney is not on this committee, and maybe Representative Marquardt, I think I looked at the committee makeup, and you're the only person on this committee that's also on education finance. But I'm just wondering if you could explain that number. You mentioned in your opening comments, Madam Chair, that this is what the state needed. And so my question, one of my questions would be, does this fully fund education then, in your opinion?
Thank you, Representative Scott.
Chair Moran.
And Chair Marquardt, thank you. It gets us closer to the priorities that we believe we need in education. I'm not too sure about the number. I don't know if Ms. Adrian can respond to fully funding of our educational system, which there are huge needs.
Ms. Adrian, I don't know if I can answer that or not here as the chair, but I would say that one of the big portions of the education finance bill is the cross-subsidy on the special education, moving from, I think, 6% of covering that difference to about 55%. So if someone was to ask, are we fully funding the cross-subsidy on special education, the answer would be no. I mean, we're still, I think it's about $800 million to fully do it. I think we're adding $460 million or something like that, or somewhere in the ballpark. But that's kind of probably the biggest component of that number. But Ms. Adrian, is there anything you'd want to add to that?
Oh, no, Mr. Chair. I don't have anything.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chair Moran, what is the number to fully fund education?
I think
Chair Moran?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair and Representative Scott. I think Chair Marquardt, did you just mention a number that it would take to fully fund education?
Chair Moran, I mentioned a number that would fully fund what's called the cross-subsidy on special education, the mandated costs versus what the state and the federal government actually cover, that difference. There still would be more that would have to be added.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Representative Scott, I do not have that number before me. One, I don't sit on the Education Finance Committee, and unfortunate, I don't have the number before me.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe you're an ex officio member of that committee just by virtue of being the Ways and Means Chair, but my concern was that in your opening comments, you mentioned that we were giving education everything that we needed, but there's not one dime, in my understanding, that goes to the formula here. And so I don't know, Madam Chair, if you could speak to the fact and answer why none of the money in this bill goes to the formula.
Chair Moran.
Mr. Chair and Representative Scott, you know, the last 2 years has been really tough. We know we have really underfunded education, I would say, since I've been here in this body. And you're right, the need is hugely great. And, you know, we're spending a lot of money to take care, to address the needs within our educational system. And of course, it's not enough. You know, there is still so much that we need to do, you know, behavioral health, mental health within our education system. You know, if you talk to our young people from elementary school to junior high to post-secondary education, They are struggling with their mental behavior, so investing in that is a real huge need. But just to catch up or try to think about what that looks like to catch up is it costs dollars. It costs real money to do that. And so my hope is that as we continue to move forward in this session, that we are making some headways within our educational system, realizing that we still have so much more that we need to do and we need to focus on. And my hope that we have a body here that can support where we are, knowing that we have more that needs to happen within our educational system.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what I'm hearing is that we don't know what the number is to fully fund education, and that you think this is a good attempt at making some headway. So I just curious, you know, the reasoning behind putting more money towards education, but not putting $1 towards the formula. And with that in mind too, just keeping in mind that we did have a bill last year that was agreed to fund education. And it seems like what this is doing is, in addition to what Chair Marquardt said about putting money towards the cross-subsidy, that what this bill is largely doing is paying for a lot of mandates that are included in the education bill. And that is troubling from a perspective of each and every school district begs us every year not to give more mandates. And I feel like the education bill is filled with that. So that's my concern and my comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Scott. And just to correct my numbers, I think it said 460 million on the cross subsidy. It's 422 million. So just to make sure that. And then also, I believe Chair Dabney will be in this committee this week to talk more specifically about the K-12 education bill. Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair. As we've been having this discussion about the education component and the discussion about cross-subsidy, all of us hear that often when we go back to our districts about unfunded cross-subsidies. And so it's encouraging to hear that there's more money being spent in that area. But my question is concerning my understanding. It's been a while since I've been on education finance, but it's my understanding that the federal government has a standard for special ed, and that we here in Minnesota have exceeded that standard. And I think that's correct. And my question was with regard to the 55% funding that you mentioned this bill does. Does anybody have a number of what that cost is, what we are doing as a state above and beyond the federal requirement? Because we always hear about the unfunded federal mandates, and it's always the federal government's fault, but it appears that we have additional standards that we've imposed here in Minnesota. And so we have a greater ability to do something about that than blaming the federal government for the lack of cross-subsidy. So my question is, if Chair Dabney is coming later in the week, that would be a good number to try and put a price tag on what we are doing as a state that is costing more dollars in cross-subsidy.
Good point, Representative Hertaus. And Chair Dabney will be here this week.
Thank you.
Representative Plowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is on line 1.11, the 200 million for the capital investment bill. Could the chair or staff give us an idea of the size of a bonding bill that 200 million would support?
Ms. Adrians.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. The debt service that is required and covered with this budget resolution is a $2.05 billion bonding bill. And there is some additional funding that would be available for cash projects as well.
Is that US dollars?
Representative Plowski. Anything?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Adrians, thank you. You said there was some money set aside for cash. Do we have an exact number on how much is going to be cash?
Ms. Adrians?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Plowski. I think it's close to $180 million in fiscal year '23 only.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is helpful.
Thank you, Representative Plowski. Representative O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering if Chair Moran would help us understand a little bit about the February forecast. We don't have that information here in front of us. It'd be important for us to understand 2 points specifically about the February forecast. One, if you could talk about when it was done in relation to the Ukraine war and the cautions that we received from MNB related to the war. Secondly, if you could talk about the structural balance moving forward in the February forecast versus the one-time money. If you could remind us of those as we look at these numbers. I think that's probably the most impactful when we look at this.
Chair Moran?
Thank you, Chair Marquardt. I'm going to pass that on to Ms. Adrian.
Ms. Adrians?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. In terms of the invasion in the Ukraine, the forecast, and I mean, it's months of work ahead of time. So I think it's fair to say that that event was not necessarily incorporated into the forecast, I guess, in a sense. But the economists are careful to always talk about the uncertainties that surround the forecast and the economy, and so they reference that, and then they follow up with a certainty report. There might be another term for it, but so there's always levels of uncertainty in the numbers and the funding, so there is some degree of that baked into it, and then in terms of your second question, so the surplus in the first biennium was just over $9 billion, and then the forecasted surplus for the tails is just over $6 billion. So a little bit less than the first biennium.
Representative O'Neill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Chair Moran, I'm wondering if you could also explain one other quick thing, since we do understand that this forecast was clearly put together before the Ukraine war happened. They did have a very cautionary tale to say that the economy is changing, inflation is at least at 8%, if not more. We've seen the worst inflation since 1990, maybe worse, maybe the mid-'80s. So that inflation actually has accelerated since February. So we're talking about massive inflation, we're talking about a war that wasn't calculated in, and I'm wondering if you could explain to us, as the nonpartisan staff just explained, that we have, approximately 9.2, 9.3 billion forecasted as a surplus in this biennium that we're in right now, and approximately 6. But Chair Moran, if you could just explain to us, have you thought about any of those things, and have you factored in any of these things as you spent nearly all between, there's a little bit left on the bottom line in this fiscal year that will carry over, maybe, but inflation could eat that up, and the Ukrainian war and the unrest in the world could eat that up. So I'm wondering if you factored in those things since, or did you just go strictly on the February forecast and that was it?
Chair Moran.
Chair Marquardt and Representative O'Neill. So a part of what we do as a collective under leadership is we take all those factors into consideration. We feel strongly that we have been able to really help the state of Minnesota recoup from the last 2 years of the pandemic and all that had brought forward. But as we looked at our budget resolution, our targets, and we looked at the forecast and what we had before us, we really was very thoughtful in creating a very comprehensive process to tackle the needs that we saw coming before us, including, something that we didn't expect, like a Ukraine war and the impact that it will have around the world, including here in the state of Minnesota. And so, we do have a bottom line of almost $2 billion, recognizing that, we need to have a cushion. And we provided for that cushion. And we're going to continue to, move forward because there are some needs now. We have, as a state, have fallen short. We have consistently been behind in really allocating appropriate dollar amounts in all the areas we have before us right now within the budget. And I think think we're in a good place. And I just hope that we have a body here in the Minnesota House that can look at the current needs, but also plan for the future by holding almost a $2 billion surplus in the tails.
Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not quite 2 billion, but there's 1.8, 1.9 billion moving forward. But you overshot that in, you know, we don't have a tails target here, but I've added up what's in all the omnibus bills, and the spending just accelerates in there. And there is very little cushion. There really is very little cushion when you talk about world unrest and hyperinflation and all kinds of things. This budget is literally, there's not a good cushion here. It's squeaking by the skin of your teeth and hoping that things work out like the February forecast predicted, but they're not going to. Clearly, they're not going to. So, you know, I can't support this because this is spending gone crazy. This is $7.4 billion above our original base of $52 billion. It's just, it's spending just on steroids, and it's even worse in the tails. So this is not responsible spending. Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, thanks for presenting this. I'd like to go back to education just very briefly. I have 8 school districts in my district, and I can tell you that 8 out of 8, they can say, and I'm guessing the other members here are hearing the same thing, is they want 2 things. They want money on the formula, and they want to address the cross-subsidy. Now, money on the formula can be sort of an arbitrary number based on, you know, what the needs may be, what the perceived needs may be. That can be argued, but I heard from Chair Marquardt that it's $422 million in cross subsidies, and I see an increase in education of $1.155 billion. And I agree with Representative O'Neill. I think there's a lot of money being spent here on a non-budget year that probably doesn't need to be spent. But I would certainly hope, we as a state pride ourselves as being an education state. Education is what we do here at the state. It's what we fund, and so that we have a chance to fix the biggest problem with the cross subsidy in the schools if you're going to spend this sort of money. And we're not doing that. We're adding a little bit, but we aren't doing it. I think it's not listening to the people of this state who are putting this money into our coffers. I really think that as you move forward, when you talk with the Senate, when you talk with the governor's office, if we're gonna spend this outrageous amount of money and not give it back to the taxpayers, at least fix something that we can certainly fix at this time in the cross subsidy. That's not a by the way, when you fix the cross subsidy, all that money that they were using to cross now goes into those schools. We can fix this, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go back to the previous question on education. Last year, I was told that we spent $500 million on the base for education. And I want to remind members and the public that this is all new spending that we would not otherwise be able to do because we have a surplus. So this is a benefit to the people of our state in spending this money. And what I did is I looked at the percentage increase from the base. And I just want to highlight a couple of things where we're prioritizing and spending. In agriculture, we're increasing the base by 43%. In climate and energy, 313%. In early childhood, 51%. In housing, 183%. And economic development, 56% increase. So and in transportation, a 47% increase. So these are large increases we wouldn't otherwise be able to do unless we had a surplus. And I'll just look at my own area, Health and Human Services. That was a 4.3% increase because that base is already so large. But I would love to do more in Health and Human Services, but this amount, the $700 million, would not otherwise be there unless we had a surplus. So this is all benefiting people of our state because of the surplus and because of wise management of the government's budget.
Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Madam Chair, on lines 1.17, 1.18, drop down to 1.20, you've got effectively a $380 million expenditure towards housing, both to prevent homelessness and 230 in the housing finance bill. Can you tell us what those specifically are going to address?
Chair Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Nash. So today in this committee, we will have a housing piece that you will hear more about today. And under the leadership of Chair Hausman, who no one can deny is very committed to increasing and making housing affordable and attainable and to prevent homelessness, that she will at that time talk a little bit more in depth about what we are doing and what she has and her committee has prioritized around housing.
Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, and Madam Chair, I believe that you are the author of the budget resolution. I'm just wondering if you've got specifics on what this money is going to, or the nuanced differences between the 150 million in line 1.17 and the 230 million in line 1.20. I just figured if we're going to be voting on this to move this budget resolution and to potentially pass it, just wondered if you might be able to give us that information before we hear the presentation on housing.
So what I
Chair
do,
Moran.
Chair Marquardt and Representative Nash. So there is an expand from homelessness to home ownership and everything in between that we are going to be investing in around housing. We have continued to not invest enough in housing, affordable housing, workforce housing, all that it entails. And this is our opportunity to do that. I would think that you may hear from Chair Hausman that we have made unprecedented investment into housing in a way that we have not in this body before. And so it's a litany from homelessness to home ownership to workforce housing. It is there, and you would definitely hear more details about that from Chair Hausman.
Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, members, there's only $50 million allocated in this portion of the bill for home ownership. And I am one of the chairs of the Legislative Commission on Housing Affordability. And we've been talking about it for years, about the need not only for potential investments, but for policy changes. And I know that the bill doesn't really have any substantive policy changes. So $50 million to promote home ownership, and then a conflation of other shiny objects being spent to create some form of virtue signaling, I guess. But I guess my other question would be, Mr. Chair, and it may be for you, Mr. Chair, but on line 2.8, there is a little over 1.6 billion being spent on a tax bill. What is being done with that? Is that for tax relief? Is that for something else? I guess because we're dealing with this here today, it would be important either for the Ways and Means Chair or perhaps the Tax Chair, because I think that people want to have questions answered about this budget resolution and what are the details in it. And I know that we're going to be dealing with these bills, but since we're in need of dispensing with this first, it's just a question that might be valuable to get out of the way.
Sir, I guess I can, Madam Chair, I don't know how much you want me to go into the tax bill today, but so the $1.645 billion are tax cuts and property tax aids and credits. That's primarily it. And the biggest areas would be moving the renter's credit from a refund to an income tax credit, as it was prior to 1981. And that's like $373 million into the first biennium. Then there is a child tax credit, one-time rebate for $308 million. That would go to be $325 per every child under 17. Then the next probably biggest area would be a Great Start child tax credit, about $183 million in the first biennium. That would provide a tax credit up to $3,000 per child between the ages of 0 and 4. 114 million in the first year goes to a cut for senior citizens on their Social Security benefits, basically saying that if you're $75,000 or less, you wouldn't pay anything into. So in general, basically, in the tax bill, it's looking at how we could make a real difference for families and workers and senior citizens, but it also has about 600 million into the tails on property tax cuts. So it's actually the largest property tax cut proposal in over 20 years. So I can give you more details, but that's just a kind of a thumbnail sketch of what's in that bill. And there are some, there's some business county kind of COVID relief in there. There's some housing that is also in that bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I always appreciate.
Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I always appreciate that you can rattle these things off from memory. It's greatly appreciated. I guess my point on this whole budget resolution is, Madam Chair, at the beginning of our existence as a committee and you as the chair, you talked about that budget bills and budget documents are a moral document, if you remember when we started 2 years ago. And I just think that the morality that's represented in this bill is perhaps not as inclusive as you might think it is. I know that many businesses around the state, I'll sit back here a little further so we get less reverb, but I think many jobs creators are looking for this to be something that's a little more detailed and a little more expansive. From my perspective, I think that some of the spending in here is sending the wrong message to the people of Minnesota. We hear this great litany of, oh, we have a surplus, let's spend it, let's do great things with it. Well, I know that there are a good number of people that are sitting at home perhaps watching this, and jobs creators that are sitting in their offices watching this very hearing, and they're wondering, well, where do I fall in this? And I guess I'm looking forward to digging into these as we head out through the week and the day, but I'm not seeing it. And I wish I did. I wish that there was more to this, because we hear this long list of things that we're going to be spending on, and I'm not demeaning any of those things. Certainly spending on a special education cross-subsidy that was put into existence in 2013 when an all DFL-controlled legislature made changes that created the problem. But this is not how you solve some of the problems. This is, in fact, as Representative O'Neill pointed out, this is $7.4 billion above base. Well, that's a problem. And we have to calculate out what's going to happen in the tails, also a problem. All these things are one-time spending that you're going to be blasting through, and you haven't dealt with what's, I think, looking at 8.5% inflation. You haven't begun calculating that into the spending. So I think that the morality of this document is in question, and I, for one, will be voting no. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Pinto. Sorry, Chair Moran, did you want to respond?
No, yeah, Mr. Chair and Representative Nash, I do understand that you cannot visualize what we're spending on by just looking at the budget resolution. It is a document in front of you with a bunch of numbers. But you will have an opportunity this week to get a breakdown of what those investments look like and how we, as the Minnesota House and the Democratic Party, are working really hard to invest in people's lives, business lives, housing, ag, and realize that this is a historic opportunity for us to do that. This chance and this moment may not come again. And as we invest in people, in businesses and others trying to recover, this is our opportunity to do that. It is good investment, and what you will have all the details that you need to understand what you see before you in a budget resolution that now only has numbers. We will put those numbers to real live opportunities and possibilities across the state of Minnesota.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe a process question that builds on what Chair Moran was just saying. My understanding is the question before us today is, does each of these, how much money do each of these committees that oversee these budget areas, what do they have to spend for them to be making decisions? And I've heard a lot of comments about the content of budget proposals we'll hear in the next week. And again, we'll have the chance to question those chairs, but that's not really the question in front of us right now regarding the content of the education finance bill. The question is whether we can, in fact, and the that committee has authorization to spend that 1.155 billion. Is that correct, Mr. Chair, or maybe Madam Chair? Am I understanding that right?
Well, Representative Pinto, my understanding, like in the tax bill, is you do have a resolution before you, but members do need to create foundation. And so there is a little leeway. But yeah, I mean, that is the process for today, is to pass a budget resolution out. Individual chairs will be coming before the committee in the the next week or so, but there's latitude, let's put it that way, Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And not meaning to criticize the questions about the content of the bill, excuse me, but in terms of there being justification about exactly how funds, for example, the education bill, are being allocated and what that committee may have decided to do, may be deciding to do, that's brought in front of us, the opportunity for that is coming up for us in the next couple of days. And I'll simply note that in the course of this, one thing that I really appreciated in this discussion today is that we've seen a series of needs get identified. I've heard discussion from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that we had a budget that passed last year and things are all set there. But now I'm hearing, in fact, a recognition that there is a special education cross subsidy that needs to be addressed. There is the issue of home ownership. We know for years we have to address that. And there are many other needs as well. So I appreciate the recognition of that. And it seems to me that this is a terrific resolution that recognizes that in each of these areas there is a huge need. We're hearing from Minnesotans, from businesses, in fact, that there's a workforce shortage, the concerns about child care, concerns about workforce housing, et cetera. And we hear this in a number of different areas. So I appreciate the recognition of the needs, and then I know we're going to be hearing in the coming week about how we're going to be meeting many of those needs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair. As I'm listening to this, I'm thinking about a year ago. And about a year ago, I was standing in line over at the Vikings Stadium waiting to get a shot. And think of where we've come in 1 year. President Biden was able to fix stuff and get healthcare deployed so that we could be vaccinated, so that we could get to work. And when people got back to work, they spend money. And when they spend money, they buy stuff. And when they buy stuff, we get more taxes. And so we have a surplus in front of us. In 1 short year, the recovery. Unemployment down, jobs up. Yes, there are problems that are out there. And that's what this budget resolution does. It fixes problems. Just in the environment area, we have funds that were rated back in the Pawlenty years that were promised to be paid back. And almost 20 years later, they're not paid back. This budget will pay them back, keeping that promise that was made so long ago. But we can ignore that success and just say we shouldn't spend this. We only should work 5 months out of the year in the first year and come back and do it every 2 years. We can spend this money, particularly now on capital investment, putting things into things, which will then produce more money, produce more taxes, produce more jobs, put more people to work, and help out the recovery. So these investments throughout these budget areas are good ideas. They're sound. Look what's happened in 1 year. I think it would be irresponsible not to do those investments. It'd be irresponsible not to have the capital investments. In the environment area, I think the air breathers and the water drinkers are going to like that bill because it fixes past problems. That's what we're here to do. Work every day during our term. Work every day to try to make things better. And this budget resolution does that. Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Chair.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We just heard about funds being rated and not fully funded, and I guess that kind of leads us right into the one that has been recently funded over the last 2 years that wasn't even created originally by the funds from the government, but by business in regards to unemployment, and we're not willing to replace that. And so now, it really kind of sounds like maybe we have a little double standard there. But in either case, my concern here is the fact that we're passing a budget resolution to spend surplus when we don't have what I think is a very important piece of that pie, and that is how is the future going to be impacted? We know that this budget surplus is generated by an analysis and a projection based entirely upon different status than we currently know is coming forward. With the inflationary coming forward, with a lot of other things coming forward, we also know that a lot of this surplus is generated from additional spending that was given through trillions of dollars of federal dollars given to individuals to help increase their spending limits. And we don't know where that money is going to come from or how it's going to happen into the future. And without the tails, without information about how it's going to be impacted, I think it's very unwise of us to be spending all of the money. We heard earlier in testimony today from questions that it's a benefit for us to spend these dollars. It's a benefit for us to spend all the dollars that we have available without very little reserve. And yet we know in today's society that every individual is only about one paycheck away from going bankrupt. And yet we're planning to do the same thing with our state government finances. To me, that's unwise, especially when we don't have information that has to be understood in regards to how the next 2 years is going to impact us and whether or not we're still going to have a surplus or whether or not we're going to have a deficit. Is it wise to spend all the money today and then next year we're having to deal with a deficit? I'm not sure that's very wise. I think that's actually short-sighted because then we're going to end up with cuts from the very things that we want to promote. So without understanding, what the tails are, certainly the information that, Mr. Chair, that you gave us in regards to taxes, those are ongoing obligations as well. And without understanding that, I think it's very unwise for us to pass a resolution this size with this number of dollars when we aren't sure what's going on. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We're going to go to Representative Johnson, then we're going to take the amendment, and then, because there's a few others on the list, but they've already spoken once, and we can come back to that. So Representative Johnson.
Chair Markart, Chair Moran, I have a little bit of a question on line dealing with 2.16. The legislature's responsibility is the allocation and funding of different things. We have well over $1 billion in federal recovery funds, but in this budget resolution, we spend zero. Now, there's a deadline that funds have to be allocated, and that is by June 15th. After June 15th, the governor gets to spend the funds however he likes, without any oversight from this body. This body is the body of government that's responsible for the spending in this state. Chair Moran, could you tell me why, possibly give us a reason why we're not doing our responsibility and allocating those funds?
Chair Moran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On line 2.16, which is the Healthcare Access Fund. So,
Chair Moran, 2.16 is the Federal Recovery Federal Fund. 2.16.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm going to pass that on to Mrs. Adrian.
Ms. Adrian.
Mr. Chair and members, there is a bill in the House that spends those funds. It's I fail to remember the House file number.
I'm sorry.
Representative Noor's bill.
Yes.
The House file number escapes me, maybe 1035. And it addresses the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. So I think the idea is to continue to work on that bill and how those funds should be spent. So I don't know that that number will remain zero for the rest of session. It's possible that will change.
Chair Moran, anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Ms. Adrian. So you are correct. We do currently have that bill in the Ways and Means Committee right now. In the remaining $1.15 billion in ARPA dollars to refill the UI Trust Fund. which is not one of the major finance bills that is before us listed in the House rules. So we are going to definitely leave that money aside in the hopes that we can reach a comprehensive deal on refilling the trust fund and compensating our frontline workers. It's really important to us that we are looking at the workers who's been hurt by the pandemic, and who have been heroic in showing up when most of us was in our house and wearing masks and didn't have to come out. They were out there and on the front lines. So none of the omnibus bills you see come through this committee over the next week will use those federal dollars, not one. And as drafted, this resolution should effectively prohibit any opportunity or to spend any of those ARPA dollars at all.
Representative Johnson.
Chair Marquardt, Chairman, I appreciate that answer. I'm hoping that we can get that UI bill through. It's important. The deadline for that is already passed. I know a number of businesses in my community, they're thinking of going out of business and no longer be job providers because they've had 1,000% increase in their UI insurance because the fund is down that much. The state is spending, if I remember right, $50,000 a day. $50,000 a day on interest to the federal government. Chair Moran, could you tell us how long that bill has been in the possession of this committee and we have not heard it?
Chair Moran.
Chair Marquardt and Representative Johnson, let me just say first that, last session, the Democrats in the House and the Republicans in the Senate made a commitment that they would set aside $250 million to support frontline workers. They are reneging on that promise to do so. And we need to do more. And so it is our commitment that in order to utilize and use those federal dollars, we have to keep our promise to the frontline workers and make that commitment to them, as we also refill the UI trust fund. They both are important. We do have over almost $9 billion, and I think we can do this. But we have to do this in partnership with our colleagues in the Senate. And right now, we're struggling to get that done in a way that we can put it in front of this body today. And so it's been sitting in committee. It's been there for a while. But we have to negotiate with our colleagues in the Senate to make sure that we are doing both the UI and also frontline workers.
Representative Johnson.
Chair Marquardt, Chairman, I appreciate the answer. Yes, there was a commitment of $250 million. I think the House bill right now is close to $1 billion. The other body passed their bill, and it's in committee, or in, but they even upped their number from the 250. They went up, not to $1 billion, not go up 4 times, but they did not renege on the agreement that was made. I have a feeling it's the House that's reneged on the deal. With this budget resolution, I have a few issues. Inflation, if we use the inflation rates they did back in the 70s and 80s, we'd probably be about 14 to 18% inflation, not the 8%, 8.5% that we are right now. I've been listening to a number of economics people that are well-versed in what's going on in the economy. And there's a new word that's buzzing around, recession. It could happen anytime. And with spending this much, when we fully funded the state of Minnesota last year in our regular budget cycle, not the supplemental, where we had to add a few dollars here and there with departments that need it. This budget resolution is almost 4 times the size of the increase that we did last year. It's between 3 and 4 times. It's a 14% increase over the budget that we passed last year. Yes, we have a $9.5 billion surplus that came from pilfering the money out of the pockets of the taxpayers of Minnesota. We've been overtaxing them. It's time to give the taxpayers their money back. This budget resolution and this budget that being proposed is so far out of line that I'm not even sure where to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Chair Moran, before we go to the amendment, any kind of comments? I think we're done with the question portion of the resolution. If you have any comments before we go to the amendment.
We're really short, Mr. Chair, and thank you. You know, I don't know who you guys been listening to, but when folks come to me who have been under stress these last 2 years, whether it's like a loss of a job, not access to health care, child care, folks, businesses who have struggled, you know, nonprofit organizations who have struggled, they are calling on us, not into the future, but right now, to help them build back better, to be better. And that is what I'm hearing today. And so this is our opportunity to invest, an historic opportunity to catch up and to keep up with the needs of Minnesotans. And that is today with also providing a cushion in the end. I don't know you guys, but $1.8 billion is a lot of money to me, and that's a pretty nice cushion. But the needs that we have before us today is even greater.
All right, thank you. Moving to amendments, we have the A02 amendment. Representative Garofalo, would you like to move that amendment?
Thank you, First of all, Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you.
It is
It's good
great
to see you.
to
It's
see
good to see
everyone.
our colleagues on both sides of the aisle. It's good to see our staff here, and looking forward to a thoughtful debate on this matter. So yes, I'll move the A02 amendment. Let me start off by saying that when I read this budget resolution today, it's one thing is very clear, and that is that many things changed during the pandemic, but one thing that did not change is our Democrat friends really like to spend money. I mean, you guys really, really like to spend money. I take a look at some of these numbers and where they're at, double-digit increases that far outpace inflation, population growth. I have to wonder if guys maybe went to Wisconsin or Iowa to find projects to fund. The government's growing that big. But my colleague, Representative Pinto, my friend, mentioned accurately that these bills, these are just numbers, that the committees will fill in these numbers. And so, Representative Pinto, I've reviewed these numbers, and maybe you could tell us before I introduce my amendment. Can you just tell me where the money is to reverse the tax increase that went into effect?
So, Representative Garofalo, just to be clear, you've moved the amendment, haven't you?
Oh, well,
I thought I
okay, I've moved the amendment.
Okay,
I have,
thank you.
yes.
I thought I had heard that.
I did move the A02 amendment.
Okay,
right.
all right. Representative Garofalo moves the A02.
So I suspect that I'm making my point here, but like Representative Pinto or maybe someone in the DFL can tell me, where is the money to reverse the tax increase that went into effect? When we look at this budget resolution, when members of the public look, where's that money at? Because right now businesses are paying higher taxes with a $9 billion surplus. Can someone in the DFL just show me where that money is? The chair, any member of the DFL. Where's the, I'm asking a,
Representative
it's not a rhetorical, it's a
Garofalo, do
real
you have
question.
a specific question for the author of the resolution or for another member?
Well, I'll ask Representative Pinto because he focused in on the topic. Representative Pinto, can you show me, because we don't write the bills here, we're just setting the number. Can you show me where the money is that exists to reverse the tax increase that went into effect?
Representative Pinto will yield.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Garofalo, just if only so that folks watching, can you talk about the tax increase that you're referring to, which I would think you'd want to.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Garofalo.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pinto, I'm happy to talk about it. Governor Walz, a bipartisan majority of the Senate, and every Republican in the House of Representatives, even some House DFLers, voted in favor of refilling the UI trust fund. So that would reverse the tax increases that went into effect earlier this year on every employer in the state of Minnesota. Every job creator right now in the state of Minnesota is paying higher taxes for unemployment insurance. And so there is strong bipartisan agreement on this. It is only a fringe of the House DFL that is holding this up. So I'm looking at this number, looking at these numbers, and to your words, you said we don't write the bills, we just look at the numbers. The committees fill those in. I don't see how the numbers are possible to reverse that tax increase to fill in the UI trust fund. So my question is, maybe, this is spring training. We've all been out of the committee room for a while. Can you show me where that money is to reverse that tax increase?
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, Representative Garofalo, my understanding is that that is moving forward. I think that Chair Moran, who's our expert here, has talked about how that is moving forward separately, and it's really important that it do so, is moving forward. And as you know, it's also extremely important that we make sure that those people who've been waiting several years to receive our support for what they did for us throughout the pandemic, that they receive support as well. So that's my understanding, is that it's a separate matter.
So Representative Garofalo, and I think your question is pertaining to your amendment, but would you tell us what your amendment does? And then we can offer more discussion if you would.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to recognize that the DFL budget resolution, as it's offered right now, does not allow a path forward, Representative Pinto. It doesn't do that. That bill, the budget resolution limits what this committee and what the House floor is allowed to spend. And you are, by rule, by passing this budget resolution, prohibiting us from being able to vote on that. It would violate our budget rules if we were to reverse the tax increase that went into effect. So what my amendment does, Mr. Chairman, the A02 amendment, and I would request a roll call on this, Mr. Chairman.
Roll call's been asked for.
So if you look on 1.3 of the Garofalo amendment, that has a good name to it, doesn't it? Sounds good. What we're doing is we're modifying these numbers, and it does two things. Number one is it allows us to reverse the tax increase that went into effect that right now the House budget resolution is prohibiting. So just to be clear, the resolution you're voting on right now would use our House rules to prohibit us from fixing the problem. So at a time when we have an over $9 billion surplus, the budget resolution we'll be voting on will prohibit you from reversing the tax increase that you allowed to go into effect. That is the first thing this does. The second thing it does is it allows us to tap into the over $1 billion in federal funds that are available that the legislature should be appropriating, that my colleague, Representative Johnson, accurately stated, that if the DFL does nothing, a pattern of doing nothing, if they do nothing on this, then Tim Walz gets to helicopter around the state, throwing pallets of money out, spending money however he wants. It's the legislature's job to appropriate funds, and that's what this budget resolution does. It fixes those issues. It reverses the mistake the DFL is about to make by ignoring the tax increases that are going to affect when we have a surplus. And I would ask for members' support. And Mr. Chairman, if I'm wrong about this budget resolution prohibiting you from solving the tax increase, please, DFL members, tell me. Let's hear the argument about how 7 is more than 4. Or 0 is, how 4 is more than 7. Walked on that talking point. So the important is, let's take a look at this and find out if I've said anything that's wrong. If your budget resolution allows you to fix that problem, then correct the record and tell me. But it doesn't. In order to fix this problem, in order to reverse the tax increase that you've put into effect, we need to adopt this amendment. I'd ask for members' support.
Representative Garofalo, I don't know if I heard you right, a word that you uttered there, but maybe I misunderstood that. It sounded like it was very inappropriate, but maybe I misunderstood that. Okay, very good.
Did you want to text me the word
no,
you thought?
No, very good. No, very good.
Was it DFL?
No, it was not. Okay, my apologies.
No,
I thought I
did I?
very good.
No,
So,
you didn't.
all right, very good. So,
I'm a mom. I listen to
Chair Moran, before we go any further, any response before we open it up for discussion to the Garofalo A2 amendment?
So, Mr. Chair and members, we can amend the budget resolution, right? Which is not uncommon under both parties. That can happen. And that opportunity will be available if broader negotiations are successful. It will happen. But currently, right now, I'm asking members to say no to this amendment.
Thank you. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm confused because I think what Representative Garofalo just said is accurate. But Madam Chair, you said before when Representative Johnson was asking you about the federal funds and paying back, refilling the UI trust fund, you said that the $1.8 billion cushion was plenty of money to make that happen. But I believe that refilling the UI trust fund is over $2 billion. And so those numbers aren't adding up. And I would also point out that in this budget resolution, one of the bills included in this is House File 2900 for frontline workers. So you're including the over $1 billion for the frontline workers in this bill, but you're not including anything to refill the UI trust fund. It's for this being a moral document, it's surely one-sided. I agree that frontline workers made a lot of sacrifices during COVID, but so did our small businesses. They were shut down by the order of the governor of this state through no fault of their own. And in fact, the governor was at least man enough to say, we're gonna hold you harmless, but the DFL House majority is standing in the way of that. So you include your $1 billion for frontline workers, but you don't help the small businesses that are, some of them already gone out of business. You're not helping them. That's my only comment, Mr. Chair.
Representative Chair Moran?
Yeah, Mr. Chair and Representative Scott. You know, I'm just going to reiterate again that we currently have a standalone bill in the committee that commits the remaining $1.15 billion ARPA dollars to refill the UI. We have a commitment to do that. In the Minnesota House of Representatives, we want to do that. But that is a part of negotiation that has to happen with our frontline workers. And so, you know, and again, I have an opportunity to amend the budget. That can happen at any point too. But as it stands, the budget resolution is before you.
Representative Hertaus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Madam Chair. You know, when March of 2020 occurred and suddenly there was a great urgency to deal with what became the pandemic as we know it, part of the governor's actions were to basically shelter in place and shut down all of our businesses. Not all of them, but too many of them. Many were allowed to continue to sell the same products that other small stores and independent businesses and operators were allowed to do. All of us in a bipartisan way recognized that the massive layoffs and unemployment that was occurring, that this would have a very deleterious effect on employers' experience ratings as it relates to unemployment compensation. And so there was bipartisan agreement that the experience ratings would not be affected and we would hold businesses harmless as a result of the pandemic. But those became kind of shallow words, because although we didn't change the experience rating, we allowed the fund to be plundered, and now through another mechanism, businesses are being assessed above and beyond their ordinary payroll contributions to the UI fund, are being penalized. And this is unconscionable. There's been bipartisan support to fill and backfill this fund. So I would remind members that this is, as Representative Scott said, a moral obligation. Not only to those who have survived being in business, but it's just a tragedy how many were put out of business as a result of this. So to Representative Garofalo's amendment, this is very important, and I would encourage everybody's support. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Garofalo, I want to apologize. I've heard the word that I thought I had heard was not the word. So I want to make it very clear for the record that Representative Garofalo did not say an inappropriate word, so
What was
my
that word,
apologies.
Mr. Chairman? What was the word you?
Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I've been listening really carefully. The audio is actually really good in Capital 120. It's better than some of your Zoom accounts. So that's great. And I just want to point out, we just listened to several Republican members talk about how this budget resolution that was brought forward by Chair Moran, that number is too big. And then they got to hit all the, we hit all those talking points on how this number was too big and we should be worried about what's going to happen. And now we have this amendment that makes the number bigger. So I just want to point out the logical inconsistency of arguing that the number is too big and then turning around and trying to make the number bigger and telling us that that's the right answer. I understand that. I mean, it's sort of, I guess, impressive that you're able to hit all the talking points in one bill at the same time and play Jerry Maguire in the hearing room and get real fired up about it. But I just want to point out the inconsistency in arguing both that the budget resolution number is too big and then turning around 10 minutes later and arguing that it needs to be bigger. So I just wanted to point that out and actually get to what the numbers are that are in this amendment and what we're looking at in front of us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Nash.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to speak in support of the Garofalo amendment, and yes, that does have a nice ring to it, Representative Garofalo. But I wanted to direct your attention back to a conversation that was had on the floor. My memory could be serving me incorrectly, but I believe it was 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, where Representative Winkler stood on the floor and said that the reason that the UI trust fund bill was not going to be brought forward for a vote or included in anything was because several of the bills that you have moving through the process are of greater priority, and I believe it was paid sick and safe time and paid family medical leave. And he said quite clearly on the floor, quite clearly, that it was not going to move until such a time that those bills were voted off the floor. So it should not be a mystery for any of you as to why this doesn't have that money in it, because your leader, your majority leader, already said that it wasn't going to be included in anything that's moving. So don't forget that. Don't forget that. Over our Passover and Easter break, I had the opportunity to meet with a number of business owners in my community, and I asked them this one question: what is your UI number as a percentage looking like? The lowest percentage of increase that I was told by these jobs creators was 200%. Some were up to 500%. And I think Representative Johnson said that he's spoken to several that were of a number even greater than that. Your budget resolution has no money in there, one, because of what Representative Winkler is making you do, but two, again, the Chair Moran's words, these are moral documents. Where's the morality? And I'm not going to question motives as Representative Becker-Finn just did about our Jerry Maguiring, but the morality that is not in this budget resolution is very apparent. Jobs creators around the state are languishing as they look at their UI number. And I did talk to several of them that said that, Jim, this may actually make it impossible for me to continue. So you've got people who, by order of the governor, shut down last year, year before, and now are looking at this bill coming due, this tax, as Representative Garofalo appropriately called it. They're now suffering under that. When are you going to step up to the plate, since this is baseball season, when are you going to step up to the plate and actually swing at a pitch that benefits jobs creators? You've got that opportunity with the Garofalo amendment right now to do the right thing and to make it so that you do not violate your budget resolution and House rules. So I would hope that if you indeed are cognizant of your responsibility and sensitive to the jobs creators, that you will adopt the Garofalo amendment, and I'm voting yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we have Representative O'Neill, then Representative Petersburg. Then I'd like to go to the author of the resolution, Chair Moran, and then close to the author of the amendment. That would be okay. So Representative O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, you know, I did a little more number crunching since we last talked, Chair Moran, and you leave very little on the bottom line, and so little that there's absolutely not even enough to even touch the UI debt. And it's over $2 billion. And I know Representative Eklund is here, and he probably knows the exact number. It might be 2.2, 2.4. It actually fluctuates every day, but it's big. And what the amendment does is takes money, some of the federal money, to backfill, which is something that I think everyone has been able to agree on, that that's a good use of the leftover federal money. But what my concern is you don't address that. Actually, you do address it in the resolution, and you say we can't use it. So it's prohibited from using it. But since you've said that, you've only left about 500 million, so $500 million, so like a quarter of what we actually need to backfill. That's all that's left on your bottom line when we look at what you've spent here, what you're spending in the tails, what we look at for the February forecast. And again, the February forecast is probably grossly understated as the economy has completely changed. We've said all that already. So I would encourage us to support this because it actually allows us to use some of the federal money to backfill the UI Trust Fund, which we, by the way, promised businesses that we would hold them harmless. Chair Moran, we promised them that we would hold them harmless. For example, just in my district, I have an agency that puts nurses into people's homes. So they have in-home health care. He has about 300 or so nurses, and they work straight through the pandemic. And he is going to be, his additional tax that's already gone in place because we haven't done our job to refill the UI Trust Fund is $88,000. That is one full staff person, one nurse that won't be going out. That's a lot of money for one little agency. This was real money, and it's really hurting the very people that sacrificed everything to put people in people's homes, for example, during the pandemic. So I don't really understand your budget resolution here because the numbers don't add up. There's not enough there to cover the UI Trust Fund, as you had said. It's less than, I mean, it's a quarter of what we actually need. You're not allowing any federal funds to be moved. And yet, here's the other weird thing in this. You know, we've already passed a bill for frontline workers. You here in the House, they did not pass in the Senate because we had done one last year with $250 million, and now it's 4 times that. So there was an agreement for $250 million to go out to frontline workers, and now the Democrats here in the House have said, well, we want 4 times that. So again, this entire resolution is nothing more than spending on steroids, not using the federal funds, which we should do, so that these businesses don't see these huge increases, and hurting the very people that have put, in this example, literally nurses into people's homes during the pandemic. So I hope that you would support this. It would allow us to use some of the federal money. I appreciate the conversation, and I will be supporting the Garofalo amendment, as we so aptly said.
So Representative Knorr had his hand up as I was reading the last list, so I'll call on Representative Knorr.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members. I think many people have focused on the UI, but Representative O'Neill, I think if I can remind you, last year when we were passing the jobs bill, you indicated the number was about $1.something billion debt. As I speak to you, it's only $1.4 billion. Members, the system is working as it was designed. Whenever we have good economy, the numbers grow. And when we end up having a recession because of the pandemic, the numbers go low, and the employers are going to be paying as it was designed to work. What we're doing here today is trying to intervene. And that $1.4 billion is what we will owe to the federal government in terms of removing the debt. And quite frankly, no one, let me put it this way, no one will see a 500% increase. Last year, yes, we held employers harmless. The taxable wage stayed the same, $35,000. And also, we put into the law that no one will see a change in their experience rating, which will have tripled, multiplied by many numbers. But we held employers harmless. And no one in this chamber made a promise that we will be looking into making sure that nothing happens into the future. So we have a bill. We have 1035 before the Ways and Means, and I'm sure we will have that conversation. But at this point, I think the Chair Moran, is correct. We will definitely take care of the businesses, but we will also take care of the frontline workers, those who put their lives at risk, those who came out to help us when we were in need. And that's where we are today. And I appreciate Chair Moran bringing the budget resolution forward, which is a moral document in how we proceed as a state. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think I've heard from the chair that we do have Representative Nor's bill in this committee for $1.5 billion approximately. Do you have any assurances that we will actually hear that bill in committee?
Chair, question for Chair Moran.
Yes.
Chair Moran.
Thank you, Chair Marquardt and Representative Peterson. What I can assure you is that we are working in negotiations with the Senate Republican to work to ensure that we are committed to refilling, to look at the $1.5 billion in opera dollars to fill the UI. But in consultation with that, we have to have a real strong conversation around frontline workers. And that is my commitment, that we are working hard to make that happen.
Representative Petersburg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Chair Moran, for that very much uncertain answer. Because if we don't get that negotiated, guess what? There will be a major increase in it. And we keep hearing a couple of times today, we've heard about how that $1.5 billion will refill the UI trust fund, but it doesn't. Got to understand, everybody, that does not refill it. What it does is it brings it back to zero. All of the experience mods and everything else that people have had their premium set upon was with a $1 billion surplus or balance in it. Without that, insurance companies are going to submit premiums that are going to replenish that. That's in addition to the experience mod that they had before that. And so what you're doing with $1.5 billion and what you're saying, well, hey, that's going to solve this problem, going to keep it from getting an increase. No, it may reduce the increase, but it's still going to be an increase. That is not, and I repeat, not holding these businesses and job providers harmless. It is creating additional dollars. And because the federal government and the state government, through its involvement within unemployment, actually expended not $1.5 billion, but $2.5 billion out of this trust fund, that's what we need to replenish. And to say that we're going to replenish it by 1.5, bring it back down to zero, and then the businesses have to, again, fill that in with their premiums, which they've already done once, is unthinkable. It just really is. And I would be glad to trim off other parts of this budget in order to fill that in, if that's what it requires. But the point is that we made a commitment to do this, and now we're reneging by going even if to the 1.5 if we do that. So this really is the amendment that we need to do. I will certainly support the Garofalo amendment, and I urge everybody else to really keep their ethics of what they said that we would do in place and actually fulfill our requirement to fully fund the replacement of these funds. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair Moran.
Thank you, Chair Marquardt. And members, we've had a really good conversation in regards to this Representative Garofalo amendment. Instead, I'm gonna, no one summed it up better than Chair Noor about where we are and what we made promises to do. And so I would like to just encourage members as we move forward to say no to the Garofalo's amendment.
To the author of the A02 amendment, Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chair Moran, I'm assuming that after we vote on this, we'll try to get the legacy bill done before we adjourn at 10:45. Is that? No, I mean, we should be able to do that. So I'm going to be very brief in my comments and ask members of the committee to do the same. Members, I understand there's disagreements on policy and on focus. When it comes to Representative Noor's comments about House File 1035, there's one reason why the bill hasn't come up on the House floor. It's because the DFL doesn't have the votes for it. Okay, you do not have 68 DFL votes to vote for that bill because it is in fact a tax increase. Now, it's a smaller tax increase than doing nothing, but it's still a tax increase. It's the worst kept secret at the Capitol. So putting aside the policy debate about what's right, what's wrong, and the focus, I do not understand the House DFL's political strategy on this. At a time where we have a record budget surplus, you are digging in on an island by yourself and allowing all your opponents to pistol whip you for advocating tax increases when there's a surplus. From a political perspective, there's nothing better the House DFL could do than put their staff in the ground and hold on to this political position. It's fun to watch you guys justify tax increases when there's a $9 billion surplus. But putting the politics aside from a policy perspective, this is the right thing to do. Please adopt the amendment, and I would ask members to support it. Thank you.
See no further debate on the A02 amendment. A roll call has been requested. Ms. Borderding, please take the roll.
Chair Moran?
No.
Moran, no. Vice Chair Olson, excused. Representative Garofalo?
Yes.
Garofalo, aye. Representative Albright?
Albright, aye.
Albright, aye. Representative Becker-Finn?
No.
Becker-Finn, no. Representative Bernardi?
No.
Bernardi, no. Representative Eklund?
No.
Eklund, no. Representative Hansen?
No.
Hansen, no. Representative Hassan?
Hassan votes no.
Hassan, no. Representative Hertas?
Aye.
Hertas, aye. Representative Hornstein?
No.
Hornstein, no. Representative Johnson?
Aye.
Johnson, aye. Representative Kresha, excused. Representative Liebling?
No.
Liebling, no. Representative Lillie?
Lillie, no.
Lillie, no. Representative Mariani?
Mariani votes no.
Mariani, no. Representative Marquardt?
Markwart, no.
Marquardt, no. Representative Miller?
Aye.
Miller, aye. Representative Nash?
Aye.
Nash, aye. Representative Nelson?
Nelson votes no.
Nelson, no. Representative Noor?
Noor, no.
Noor, no. Representative O'Neill?
O'Neill, aye.
O'Neill, aye. Representative Pulowski?
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Representative Petersburg?
Petersburg, aye.
Petersburg, aye. Representative Pinto?
No.
Pinto, no. Representative Schumacher?
Schumacher, aye.
Schumacher, aye. Representative Schultz?
No.
Schultz, no. Representative Scott?
Aye.
Scott, aye. Representative Sundin?
Sundin, no.
Sundin, no. Mr. Chair, that is 11 ayes and 16 nays.
There being 11 ayes and 16 nays, the motion does not prevail. The A02 amendment is not adopted. To the budget resolution 04, Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just ask members to vote no on this resolution. Thank you.
Any other comments on the budget resolution before I call on the author of the budget resolution? Seeing none? Chair Moran.
Chair Marquardt and members, I think this is a balanced and comprehensive budget resolution that reflects a comprehensive approach to make Minnesotans' lives better today and into the future. I ask for your support.
With that, we will take a roll call on budget resolution 04.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think you need a roll call on this.
I think
You don't. We already have it. We don't need a roll call.
Madam Chair, I think we have been doing that. We probably, on the virtual, we used to have to do it for sure, but
Well, Mr. Chair, why don't we do a roll call?
Okay. So, thank you, Representative Garofalo. So we will take a roll call. Ms. Borgerding, please take the roll.
Chair Moran.
Aye.
Moran, aye. Vice Chair Olson, excused. Representative Garofalo.
No.
Garofalo, no. Representative Albright.
Albright, no.
Albright, no. Representative Becker-Finn.
Aye.
Becker-Finn, aye. Representative Bernardi.
Aye.
Bernardi, aye. Representative Eklund.
Aye.
Eklund, aye. Representative Hansen.
Aye.
Hansen, aye. Representative Hassan.
An aye.
Hassan, aye. Representative Hertas.
No.
Hertas, no. Representative Hornstein.
Aye.
Hornstein, aye. Representative Johnson.
No.
Johnson, no. Representative Kresha, excused. Representative Liebling.
Aye.
Liebling, aye. Representative Lillie.
Lillie, aye.
Lillie, aye. Representative Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Representative Marquardt.
Markwood, aye.
Marquardt, aye. Representative Miller.
No.
Miller, no. Representative Nash.
No.
Nash, no. Representative Nelson.
No. Excuse me, aye.
Nelson, aye. Representative Noor.
Noor, aye.
Noor, aye. Representative O'Neill.
O'Neill, no.
O'Neill, no. Representative Pulowski.
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Representative Petersburg.
Petersburg, no.
Petersburg, no. Representative Pinto.
Aye.
Pinto, aye. Representative Schumacher.
Schumacher, no.
Schumacher, no. Representative Schultz.
Aye.
Schultz, aye. Representative Scott.
No.
Scott, no. And Representative Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, aye. So, Mr. Chair, that is 17 ayes and 10 nays.
Thank you. There being 17 ayes and 10 nays, the motion does prevail. The budget resolution is adopted. So thank you, members. And with that, I'll turn this back over to Chair Moran.
All right.
Aye.
So we're going to try to, according to Representative Garofalo, we're going to do this in 5 minutes.
9, but yeah.
9, okay. Okay, let me see. So, no, he's ready to go. Okay. So up we have our first Omnibus Finance Bill, which is House File 3438, the Legacy Finance Bill. Chair Lillie, as soon as you, any staff get up, oh, you're there. Why don't we start? Why don't you introduce your bill?
Madam Chair, would you like to, do you need a motion?
Yes, could you please move House File 3438?
That is my motion. I think you had a.
So, Chair Lillie, he's moving House File 3438 to be recommended for placement on the General Register. Please, explain your bill.
Thank you. That is my motion. So, thank you, Madam Chair and members. And this is going to be tough because I think we have a great story to tell in our legacy area. In 2008, the voters of Minnesota passed a constitutional amendment to raise their taxes 3/8 of 1% on themselves. And this bill captures that effort. Most of our work has historically been done in the first year, but this bill kind of stretches and grows a bit into the second year. Primarily, most of our work is capturing what the Lessard-Sams Council does, and they look at a ton of projects. Here's kind of their folder. You can bring that home and read it tonight if you want, and there's over $300 million worth of requests, which they look at diligently and study, and some of our members on this committee are members. Representative Becker-Finn was on the council as they came forth with these proposals, and Representative Eklund now is carrying that and working on it, and Representative Heitzman. But it's a citizen council, and they propose many projects. The House research people have put together a deep dive into what these projects are and where they go, and they make a strong effort to spread these investments all over Minnesota, and done a great job in these last years of really trying to improve Minnesota. So it's a total of, in the Lessard-Sams piece, of $159 million going to 49 different programs, and 29 different organizations currently are getting it. So that's just a really brief of Lessard Sam's, which is unfortunate. I'd love to talk about it all day because they really are doing great work, and I really hope members take a deeper look at the work that they're doing, because it's something that we all can be very, very proud of. Now switching into the other areas of the funds, we, as we've heard this morning, there was quite a bit more cash that came in, and the Lessard Sam's was able to capture that in their efforts. So we included a funding in the clean water area, and I'll go through those. And we also included increased funding in the parks and trails and the arts and cultural area. Again, that's in your deeper dive. I could have staff go into it if you wanted, but we're gonna zip through that. And we did some tweaks with the way the water area. If you can look at the list, there's some house positions that we've done to kind of meet the current times, whether that be some work on PFAs or, and I'm pretty excited to see like some of the extra work because we've been hearing a lot about the lead problem. And so we're making a strong effort to deal with that in the metro and in greater Minnesota. I'm not going to go through everything. So then we change so that the members that are on the Clean Water Council are actually voting members. Currently, the members are not voting like they are in Lessard Sam's, so we change it so that they're voting members. There's a couple minor extensions that were asked for, and we're including those in this bill. But there's, just in the sake of time, I'll probably stop there and then stand for questions. Again, there's some amazing work that's being done in these with these funds. In the arts and cultural area, amazing parks and trails all over the state of Minnesota. In the clean water area, we really strong work that we can be proud of. And then again, in the Lessard Sam's component, great investments in restoring our prairies and habitats, increasing hunting opportunities for everyone in Minnesota. With that, I'll stand for questions. Sorry, that was just kind of a quick.
Well, thank you, Chair Lillie. There's no amendments that were pre-filed for this bill. Are there any questions or comments? Representative Garofalo.
I don't think anyone else has it. So, Madam Chair and Representative Lillie, so usually the Clean Water Council will make recommendations for the Clean Water Fund. This is the second year of the biennium, so that's not done. So what's the basis of these recommendations that are in this bill?
Chair Lillie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Garofalo. It's a very good question. So it is an opportunity that we're trying to meet. There's, with the current times, it's the council is advisory, as is Lessard Sam's, but we're trying to work with, trying to meet the current issues and spend a little bit of the money that's on the bottom line. Just to be clear, so everybody knows, we're leaving a robust, in all funds, we're leaving a robust reserve to meet some of the things that we're talking about earlier. So there is a strong reserve, but it's a shame not to spend some of the money maybe in this year and to address some current issues that we're seeing out in the public, especially like the lead service sort of things.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Representative Lillie. I reviewed the bill. I didn't see anything for more training for safer tree trimming, so people don't get in accidents trimming trees and stuff. I didn't see that in the bill. Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman and members, I'll be voting no on the bill for the reason I specified regarding the Clean Water Fund, but also because of the unnecessary amount of spending. I'll be voting no on this bill. Would encourage colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Representative Johnson.
Well, Chair Moran, Chair Lillie, it's an interesting bill. I remember when the the constitutional amendment in 2008 was adopted, watching the commercials on TV, watching DNR begging for it because they didn't have enough money to manage the land they had. I don't know how many thousands of acres they've purchased with this fund since then, since 2008. Or actually before, I think it was the 70s, late 70s when it started.
Chair Lillie.
Thank
Well,
you,
I
Madam
can't-
Chair, and just quickly, we're in our 14th year, so,
But
2008.
Representative Johnson, quickly.
in this bill, there's 41 square miles of acreage being purchased again between PILT, without PILT, and easements. 41 square miles. That's over a township. A township is 36 square miles. The acquisition of land by this state has to stop. That amendment moved forward as constitutional amendment because the DNR could not manage, didn't have the funds to manage their land. They didn't have the funds to manage their land, why are they buying more? With that, I will be voting no.
Any other, Representative Beckerfin?
Madam Chair, I know we're short for time, so I will save my comments for the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Chair Beckerfin. Seeing no further questions, Chair Lillie, any closing comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members, for your time this morning. And again, there's some amazing work that's done with these funds, and happy to visit with representatives that had some concerns or questions. It's land that we all can enjoy as Minnesotans, but we can debate that forever. And but thank you very much for your time this morning.
Okay, members, the Lillie motion before us is that House File 3438 be recommended for placement on the General Register. Ms. Anna, please take the vote.
Chair Moran.
Aye.
Chair Moran, aye. Vice Chair Olson, excused. Representative Garofalo.
Garofalo, no.
Garofalo, no. Representative Albright.
Albright, no.
Albright, no. Representative Becker-Finn.
Aye.
Becker-Finn, aye. Representative Bernardi.
Aye.
Bernardi, aye. Representative Eklund.
Aye.
Eklund, aye. Representative Hansen.
Aye.
Hansen, aye. Representative Hassan.
Aye.
Hassan, aye. Representative Hertas.
No.
Hertas, no. Representative Hornstein.
Aye.
Hornstein, aye. Representative Johnson.
No.
Johnson, no. Representative Kresha, excused. Representative Liebling.
Aye.
Liebling, aye. Representative Lillie.
Lillie, aye.
Lillie, aye. Representative Mariani.
Mariani, aye.
Mariani, aye. Representative Marquardt.
Markwood, aye.
Marquardt, aye. Representative Miller.
Miller, no.
Miller, no. Representative Nash.
No.
Nash, no. Representative Nelson.
Nelson, aye.
Nelson, aye. Representative Noor.
Noor, aye.
Noor, aye. Representative O'Neill.
O'Neill, no.
O'Neill, no. Representative Pulowski.
Pulowski, aye.
Pulowski, aye. Representative Petersburg.
No.
Petersburg, no. Representative Pinto.
Aye.
Pinto, aye. Representative Schumacher.
Schumacher, no.
Schumacher, no. Representative Schultz.
Aye.
Schultz, aye. Representative Scott.
No.
Scott, no. And Representative Sundin.
Sundin, aye.
Sundin, aye. So Madam Chair, that is 17 ayes and 10 nays.
On a vote of 17 ayes and 10 nays, the motion prevailed in House File 3438 as is on the floor. We are in recess until 1 o'clock.